Hi, I'm Neil McCormick. Welcome to the Bridge podcast, Music, War and Peace, in which we discuss the power of music to address such mighty life and death subjects. My guest for this episode is a brilliant Scottish singer-songwriter and band leader, a great musical hero of mine, Mike Scott of the Waterboys. Greetings, Mike.
Hello, Neil.
I'll give you a bit of background. So Mike formed the Waterboys in 1983, has led a rather sprawling, ever-changing combo for over 40 years.
What do you mean sprawling? What does that mean, sprawling?
It changes in size and shape. It's got an amorphous quality. You've had over 60 members, I believe.
Over 80.
80, good
More
God.
than any other band in the history of music.
Wow.
Yeah, nearest competitor, Santana.
What about the Fall?
Way back down the list.
Okay, all right. 15 albums, I think, of the Waterboys. A couple of solo albums in there for good measure. You're a man whose passion for music runs deep. A very great lyricist, I think, who makes music of huge scope and depth. Everyone knows your quite mystical 80s hit, The Hole of the Moon, but your career has encompassed a huge array of sounds: rock, soul, funk, folk, balladry, electronica. And your lyrics have tackled a vast array of subjects. I mean, your latest, rather extraordinary concept album is Life, Death, and Dennis Hopper, based around the life of actor, photographer, and filmmaker Dennis Hopper, we'll get to that. So, if I can be so bold, I'd suggest there's an underlying theme in your work which has to do with using music as a vehicle to heighten spiritual awareness. Would you recognize that? And if so, where does that stem from?
I got into music, Neil, just because I was in love with music. It was as simple as that. But I have lots of other interests, and they all filter into my music making. And one of the things I'm interested in is growing as a human being, and that means expanding my consciousness and increasing my understanding and my sense of awareness of what's around me and what I'm doing in my life, and as much as I can understanding other people's realities. That's part of my own work as a human being, and that comes into the music now and then. Different topics come into Waterboys music at different times, and it's a bit like a tide. Sometimes the tide moves in, and it's a kind of spiritual side of the lyrics. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's different stuff.
Why was music the thing that hit you? Why is that your vehicle of expression?
Why? I do not know. I don't know. I've started falling in love with records when I was a kid. You know, when I was a teenager, I fell in love with girls. But before that, I fell in love with records, pop records that I heard on the radio. Like Listen to Me by the Hollies or Mony Mony by Tommy James and the Shondells. 1968 was the year that I came on to music. And I would hear these things on the radio, and I would be smitten. I would be in love with them, and would be desperate to hear them again. And in those days, 60 years ago, you couldn't just go on a streaming service and find any music ever made. You had to trust to luck and wait for it to come on the radio, or you had to go to a record shop and hope they had it in stock and had a listening booth and would play it to you, or you had to buy it. And I would be on tenterhooks until I could hear these things, Listen to Me or Mony Mony, whatever it was, again. And then suddenly the relief of hearing it, oh yes, that's what it's, and they would appear to my imagination as complete things. Now, as an experienced music maker and record producer, when I hear records, I think, the bass drum's a bit loud, or the tom-toms are too loud there, or he's slightly out of tune on that note of the vocal. All that is integrated into my listening experience. But when I was a kid, I just listened to things, and they hit me as a single entity, a sort of explosion of colour in music. Man, if I could only go back to that.
Yeah. In your own music, you've by the time you're in the Waterboys in the early 80s, and you've done a few little things before that, you're definitely writing serious songs, or songs of great lyrical aspiration. What songwriters were your inspirations to raise your game in that way?
Bob Dylan, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Who, David Bowie, American soul music.
What was there a kind of standard you set yourself? What was your idea going forward?
Just to try and write songs properly. Yeah, there was a moment where I realised I'm beginning to write songs properly, probably when I was about 21 or 22. I was stopped trying to write like other people and try to find my own voice. I remember I made a record very early on, Neil. It was called Whatever Happened to the West, and it was by my pre-Waterboys band, Another Pretty Face. Yeah. And we got one of the worst reviews in the history of the music press from a chap called Gavin Martin in the NME. And he said, just when we've all forgotten what the Clash sounded like in 1978, here's Another Pretty Face to remind us. And I've never forgotten it. As you can tell, I've got it word for word. And it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I never in my life tried to sound like any other fucker again. It just sounded like myself. And Gavin gave me a great gift that day, and we became friends later on. And he was a wonderful man, wonderful writer, and I'm very grateful for that piece of good counsel. That's the music press at its best, when it gives an artist something that's incredibly useful.
Okay, well, that's a nice thing to hear about Gavin. You came in at punk,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
but
I go back beyond.
Yeah,
punk.
you never rejected the kind of '60s aspects, the freak aspects of the '60s. I think appealed to you particularly, and have resounded in your work. A lot of that generation said, no more, that was all bad, and we're going somewhere else.
Well, the funny thing is that a lot of the people that were saying that, like Johnny Rotten and so on, they were prog rock fans. They were just hiding that stuff. I was never into prog rock. I liked the stuff like the Stones and Bob Dylan and soul music, and still do. It was great. And early rock and roll.
I mean, when I first really got into the Waterboys in the 80s, I wrote an article for Hot Press in Ireland, which was not exactly hailing you as a new Bob Dylan, but recognizing that you were rooted in some of the same things, using language to put through to Stranger and Wilder Places. There was folk narrative in there. There was something about the language that really resounded with that. And so I know Dylan was important to you. You've mentioned him here, as he should be to anyone who loves, words and music. Did you have an interest in his early, more political protest aspects?
Well, I did like songs like The Times Are Changing and Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. It's All Right Ma, I'm Only Bleeding. I mean, those must be three of the greatest songs of the whole popular culture era. They're magnificent. But for me, personally, as a young kid, I liked the musicality of the slightly later material, like Highway 61 and Blonde on Blonde. That was really the Dylan period that teased my musical receptacles, if you know what I mean. The earlier stuff was a little bit bleak musically, but lyrically magnificent.
This is not a Dylan song, but because you don't really write those type of songs, but you did play a Woody Guthrie song on your Fisherman's Blues album, This Land Is Your Land, which is kind of the first protest song that people are really aware of. It's huge influence on Dylan. Why did you choose that song, and what does it mean to you?
There's a beautiful message in the song, and it has a vision of America in it, a sort of higher vision of America, certainly higher than the vision that's being attempted at the moment politically. And it's also very easy to play. It's a 3-chord song. It's one of these songs that's very useful in a jam session or at a party, because once you play the first chords, everybody there can pick it up. You don't have to go, hey, wait a minute, mate, you better play this bit here. Everybody's got it immediately, which means it's great for a sudden explosion of music at a party or a session. So we loved playing it in the Waterboys, and we used to play it sometimes in concert, but we often played it just informally.
There was this year there was a big Bob Dylan movie, Complete Unknown, which sort of taps into that period of his early folk years in New York, his involvement in as a very young man in the protest movement, and his moving into the electric explosion of the 60s, which is where he becomes more interesting to us as listeners now. But that song features in there. Woody Guthrie features in there. That lineage features in there. You often tap back into the past, very in your new album, Life, Death, and Dennis Hopper. You've tapped very directly into a biographical life. But I believe you weren't a fan of A Complete Unknown.
No, I haven't seen it, Neil. I can't assess the film, but I've no interest in biopics. I don't like the way they mess around with facts and chronology. And I've read enough about the Dylan film to know what liberties have been taken. And, I know the real story. I don't want to see a dramatization of it. And I heard one of the tracks on a playlist that someone had made. I heard the version of Like a Rolling Stone. It was all right, but it's like the Ruttles without the humour. It's a facsimile. I don't need to listen to a facsimile. Maybe some young people do so that they can get turned on to the real thing of Bob Dylan and it's a gateway. Maybe, and that's very nice if it is. But for me, I've heard Like a Rolling Stone for 50 or 60 years. I know how great it is. I know how great he sang it at the Manchester Free Trade Hall in 66. I don't need to hear a facsimile, however good the guy's impression of Bob Dylan is. Why should I be interested in that? No interest whatsoever. And no interest at all in a film that plays hard and loose with the actual facts and changes things around. And no interest at all.
So how does that differ to what you're doing, creating? I don't know. You've a concept album, I guess it is, about the life of a real person, a historical figure, in which this is the life, Death, and Dennis Hopper, and which you're tackling, a real part of it.
It's not a biopic, mate. It's not a dramatization. It's factual.
But it's interpretation. I'm just, if you have that strong feeling about a biopic rendition, what's your approach to the material?
They're different genres. Okay. They're different genres. Film is working in a particular way where it presents a complete realized reality. Song is different. It's a different medium. It allows for interpretation on the part of the listener, and it meets the factual reality in a different way. I don't want to make claims from a record and say, oh, it's so respectful or anything like that. But there is a difference.
You're very fascinated with that generation that came into kind of artistic power in the 60s. What is it?
Am I?
Yeah. Well, I follow you on well, we used to call it Twitter.
And, I still call it Twitter.
Yeah, I still call it Twitter, and actually I don't like to admit I'm on there anymore. Although I do lurk around sometimes looking to see if anybody I know has said anything interesting, where you talk about the looks of the Rolling Stones, the looks of Brian Jones. Even on this record, you're talking about the greatest art. I can't remember the exact generation in 2000.
That's a Dennis Hopper quote.
Oh, is it? So what is this?
You see, in that song, I'm putting myself into Dennis and using a lot of quotes that he said. I can't use them exactly for copyright, so I've just changed the words very slightly, but it's to present as best I can his attitude at that moment.
Well, why does that generation interest you as much?
Oh, probably because of the age I am, Neil. Probably because that's when I was growing up. Yeah, that's what I knew. I suppose if I was 20 years younger, I might be interested in the 1980s. It's hard for me to believe, but it maybe so. Okay.
So this podcast is a broad theme, war and peace. I don't think you really write what anybody would think of if they were just to say, oh, it's a peace song, it's a peace anthem, in the sense of promoting peace as a concept, which seems a very specific kind of song. But you do write a lot about inner peace.
Do I?
Oh, yeah.
Evidence, please.
Well, inner harmony. So Glastonbury from Dream Harder, I find God where he always was. That idea of finding the pan within might also talk about that. The idea of tuning into a more cosmic sense of self that is at one with the world. I think that's a big part of what you're laughing at me, of what you're writing. Go on.
Well, that's your interpretation and your words you're putting on, and you're kind of asking me to agree with those. But I would put it.
No, I'm asking you to tell me what you think.
I'd put it in a very different way.
Okay.
Well, what is it you want to know?
Well, how would you put it? What do you think those songs are attempting to?
Well, they're all doing different things. They're all different topics. Glastonbury song was written using the cut-up method, the William Burroughs cut-up method. I had a whole lot of lines from my musings and adventurings of that period of time. It was about 1991. And I typed them all out, and then I cut them up. You know the method. I cut them up, I put them in a cup and shook it around, and I brought them out one by one and laid them out. And if they made too much sense, or if they didn't make enough sense, I'd move them around a bit. I feel I have the right to do that. And then I made them rhyme, and I put them together, and it created what to me was a slightly surreal picture. And it does mean something, but I wouldn't sum it up by saying it's about inner peace or anything like that. Definitely not about that. And the idea, I just found God where he always was. Well, if everybody's had spiritual experiences in their lives at different times, and when I have them, they always feel like a reminder. They always feel like I'm being brought to an understanding, a remembering. Oh, yes, of course. It always feels like that to me. And that's what's in that line. Just found God where he always was. Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay. The album This Is the Sea, which was the huge Waterboys breakthrough album, and is a masterpiece, I think. It's a magnificent record. But there's a lot going on in there, but the pan within is a part of that, and the idea of... well, that was the river, this is the sea. You're into something much, much bigger now. You actually spent a few years at a spiritual commune in Findhorn?
Community, not
okay.
commune, but yes.
So what was that? Well, tell me about that. What was that about?
Well, the Findhorn community was founded in 1962 by three people. It had absolutely nothing to do with the countercultural or pop culture or hippie culture of the day. It was founded by three very conservative people who'd followed various spiritual disciplines with great dedication for many years. And they found themselves in a situation where a community gathered around them. And it grew and grew, and it's still there. It's 63rd anniversary this year, and I went there because in the 1970s and 80s it became a workshop centre, a place where you could go for spiritual education, and I went and did a couple of courses there and ended up living there for a while. I met my second wife there, and it was a very powerful influence on me in a very wholesome way, I would say. It's hard to explain because people who haven't been there, they think, oh, is it, like you used the word commune, is it a commune, is it a cult, is it weird? The funny thing is it was so unweird, it was so normal, and it's hard to get that over to people who've never been there.
Has that time stayed with you?
Oh, definitely. I picked up tricks there that I still use. Yes, tricks of consciousness and awareness and remembering.
Another of your albums I do really, really like, and I've discussed this with you before, is Rock in a Weary Land, which was kind of your comeback with the Waterboys from that experience. There's a song on there, Let It Happen, where you have this idea of a person saying, welcome back to the real world. Well, it's the real world, baby. You're going to have to toughen up. And you say
your real world is a fake.
Your real world is a fake. You talked to me at the time about having to sort of this idea that it's all very well finding peace in a community in Scotland where everyone's seeking peace, the challenge is to bring that into this mad environment.
Peace. Keep
You don't like the
mentioning
word peace.
Oh, I like the word peace and the concept peace very much, but that wasn't really what it was about. Peace, inner peace. It's not really about that. Is there such a thing as inner peace? It suggests that there's a sort of point you get to where you stop living or you stop experiencing the world as it is. But it's not like that. And Findhorn, I remember people saying to me, oh, is it a sort of retreat centre? And I thought, no, it's not a retreat centre, mate. It's fucking advance into the front centre. Because if you go to Findhorn, you're going to meet all the challenges that are there waiting for you in your consciousness or your karma that you need to go through. And this because of the dedicated work that the founders and everybody who's gone to Findhorn has done, they've created a space where you can step into it and you can meet those experiences that you need in order to move forward in your evolution as a person. And that's what Findhorn was for me. And the challenge for me coming out of Findhorn was to keep that focus in the distraction of the world. So when you say peace, I think perhaps it's a sort of shorthand for keeping the focus. Focus is a better word for it, maybe. And I did used to find that very challenging. You know, I'd go to Findhorn, I would have all these learning experiences, and it changed the way that I saw the world and changed the way that I felt inside in a very powerful but useful way. And then I would come back into cities and the speed of the city and the noise of the city and the distortion and everybody dealing with things on what seemed like a very shallow level and keeping their deeper selves private or hidden or protected. That was very challenging at first, but over the years, and I did spend 7 years living in Findhorn and touring as a professional musician from Findhorn, I learned how to integrate the two worlds, and they're both inside me now. It's no challenge at all. It's just something that I picked up along the way, it feels like. But for a while, it was quite a challenge.
Okay. In that song, I would like to quote a verse to you because I think it's an interesting point.
Are we still on Let It Happen?
We're still on Let It Happen.
Yeah.
I know we're going back, 25 years.
Oh, I don't mind, man. I don't mind.
It's a fantastic album. I listened
you.
to that one again yesterday. Intense, distorted, depiction of
how the world appeared to me when I came back out of Findhorn.
There's a verse in that because again on this topic of war and peace as polar things that the songs might be about. Here comes the peace campaigner. She says the end justifies her means. Her words so full of reason felt like napalm on my dreams. I said, album? Peace is not a word, never. She calls me traitor, I just grin. I said, you got to live it every moment or else you're just sucking wind.
I just read the book by Frank Zappa's daughter, Moon Unit Zappa. It's called Earth to Moon. It's a very, very good book. You've probably read it. And it's a lot about Frank's parenting and his absent parenting. He sounds like he must have been about the worst parent, he neglected his children, was always away, never had any time to talk to them, never showed any interest in them. And then a few weeks after I read the book, I was reading a quote from Frank. He's talking about, America, you're letting your children down, you're teaching your children this and that. And I thought, wait a minute, mate. So there's an example. The peace campaigner, unless you live it every moment, you're just sucking wind. He was just sucking wind.
Yeah. Pop music is full of these Frank Zappa-like ideals of peace and love, while all these bands are fighting with each other and squabbling over who gets top billing and what and falling out. You write quite a lot, I think, about conflict, and if you've got something to say that's about something you don't like, that goes into song with probably a sense of sometimes a quite extreme vitriol that I doubt you would exhibit in your daily behavior in real life. The one example of that is "Be My Enemy" off This Is the Sea.
Do you know Bjork's song "An Army of Me"?
Yeah.
Well, I have that in me too, and if someone fucks with me and I need to deal with it, then they'll meet an army of me. That's part of my repertoire and it's available should I need it. But very, very rarely happens. And hopefully as we all grow older, we learn ways of dealing with things more diplomatically. Certainly when I was in my 20s, if I had to deal with stuff, I would be harsher. Just like the song Be My Enemy is kind of harsher than I would right now. Although I should say Be My Enemy is a bit of a spoof, really. It's a sort of spoof on the Dylan put-down songs of 65 and 66. And I thought, how can I push this? Can I make it more paranoid, more speedy, more freaked out? So it was a bit of a deliberate pastiche.
Also, that album opens with Bang the Drum, which is not exactly an acclamation of those that bang the drum.
That's a warning. It's a get off my fucking path, mate. Yeah. And I have that in me. I have that boundary in me. If it needs to come out, it comes out.
Now, as a band leader, you've had, as you corrected me, 80 members of the Waterboys. What skills of diplomacy and leadership does it require to lead the Waterboys, to lead these ensembles and always turn them into these incredible bands? Because they are always incredible bands.
Well, I'll go back to the same period of time. This is the sea. I remember I had a girlfriend who was 10 years older than me, and I was having some issue with a drummer in the band who wasn't playing it like I wanted him to play it, and I couldn't articulate. I couldn't find a way to express what I wanted him to do or what I needed him to do musically. And because I couldn't express it, I got frustrated. And he was kind of a bit of a petulant guy anyway. And I remember his girlfriend saying to me, well, look, why don't you just change your own attitude before you go back in the room? Don't go back in snarling. Just change your attitude. Just change yourself. You've got the power to change yourself. I'd never realised that. I grew up in Scotland where you just respond to things. Are you fucking talking to me, mate? And all that. That was the kind of culture that I grew up in. And suddenly to have the concept that, hang on, I can choose how I'm going to be in the next scene, like an actor. So I did that. I remade myself and walked back into the rehearsal room with a different attitude and was able to speak to the drummer in a very friendly, cheerful way and encourage him or cajole him to do what I wanted him to do. And that was an incredible lesson. And I suppose that set me on the path of leading bands over the 40 years since. I suppose I had some other skills that I brought to it myself anyway, but that was a very crucial moment for me. And learning that how I pitch myself can make such a difference to the musicians in the band. It can make the difference of how they feel about themselves and their participation in the ensemble. And another very important thing is to do nothing. Over-controlling things is the most boring thing in the world, when people control things. And I really like to let the guys in my band or girls do what they want, and play what they want. And I'll only just nudge it along if it's really not going in the right direction. And it would have to be going very much in the wrong direction for me to actually take that step. I'd much rather be the kind of band leader who creates a space in which everybody has free expression and that I can trust that expression will reach a congruent quality that will translate to the audience. That's the job. And often doing nothing is the way to do that. Okay. The law of reversed effort, as the Zen people call it.
All right. Your songs, they're always about something. You don't just write, I love you, ooby-dooby-doo. How important is the theme of a lyric or a song to you? Do you think this is something I'm going to stand by, or this is something I want to say? Do you have an idea before you've started? Does it just emerge?
They tend to just emerge, Neil. They tend to work organically. I'll have a title that I like, and I think, that sounds like a good song title, and then I'll extrapolate a lyric from that. But in the process of writing the lyric, my own feelings and my own beliefs, such as they are, my own beliefs are in my song, as Sly Stone sang. They come out. They can't not come out. Whatever it is that at core I think or believe, it's got to filter into the songs, and it does.
Do you have faith in the power of music to change the world, or is that just a pie in the sky idea?
We've passed, for the time being, we've passed the high water mark of music's ability to influence culture and societal change. I would say it reached a high point from about 1963 to 1970. And has been in decline since. I don't mean decline necessarily in quality, but in its ability to move the culture or to move society. It's very rare that a song cuts through with that kind of power now, the kind of power that a Hey Jude or a Times Are Changing, or if you go to San Francisco, or All You Need Is Love did back in the day. And also, we're not all listening to the same things anymore. I'm sure you remember at school, I would go to school the day after Top of the Pops, and everybody would say, did you see him with his curly hair and his big face? Mark Bolan's first appearance on Top of the Pops. Everybody saw the same thing. Or the Morecambe and Wise show on a Saturday. Everybody saw it because there were only 2 channels and one was showing something cool, so everybody watched that. Now everybody's ear pods in, listening to their own little corner of the universe. We're not all participating in the same experience. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just change, and it's evolution, and it's on its way to somewhere. Let's hope it's a good place. But it's very different, and it diminishes the power of single songs or single musical actions to influence the whole culture at the same time. Well, one of the last times that happened, I suppose, with Live Aid.
Yeah, well, Live Aid was huge in that respect. What do you think of the notion of musicians standing up for a cause and saying we're doing this now for this reason? We've put aside the...
Yeah. Well, why not? It's an easy thing to be cynical about. And, you get your Frank Zappas pontificating about children and neglecting his own kids. But most musicians are very fair-minded people, just regular citizens. Sometimes I'll say something on Twitter and people say, stick to music, mate. And I think, well, fuck you. I don't tell you to stick to your job. You're allowed to have opinions. Why am I? And musicians are like everybody else. Artists, we get exercised by injustice when we see it. And well, why not say it? Okay. And why not stand up for things? Yeah, it's all right.
Do you have a sense of mission about your music? And if so, what is the mission?
I don't have a greater sense of mission, as in I want to set out to nothing like that. But I have a creativity inside me, and really I'm happiest when that's getting expressed and fulfilled, and I'm working on something. I'm a bit like Sherlock Holmes. The Sherlock Holmes books by Arthur Conan Doyle? When Sherlock didn't have a case to work on, he would get depressed and fed up and fidgety. And I'm like that. If I wake up and I've got nothing to work on, I don't know what to do with myself. What makes me happy is when I've got a job, whether it's editing a song that I've just written or an old archive piece from 40 years ago, or whether it's coming here to do interviews or going to do a concert. As long as I'm engaged and I'm expressing that creativity and I'm living my life through music, then I'm happy, and that's the mission for me. Okay. Keep doing that.
All right. Well, I hope you do keep doing it.
Thank you.
And we'll keep listening.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That's Mike Scott from the Waterboys on Music, War and Peace.